In the summer of 1960, a lone figure stepped off a small boat onto a rugged shore of Lake Tanganyika. She carried with her no degree, no scientific title, just a notebook and a pair of binoculars. Locals warned her that the forest beyond was dangerous, filled with unpredictable creatures, but she went anyway. Day after day, she climbed through the tangled green wilderness, sitting silently among beings who wanted nothing to do with her. Until, slowly, they began to accept her. What she saw next would shake science to its core and forever change the way we understand animals, nature, and even humanity itself. Her name was Jane Goodall. Born in London in 1934. Jane had dreamed of Africa since she was a child. Encouraged by her mother, Van, who never discouraged her wild ambitions.
You'll have to work hard, take advantage of opportunities, and never give up.
That advice guided Jane throughout the entirety of her life.
And she supported all my childhood passion for animals. My mother found I'd taken earthworms to bed with me. She didn't get mad and throw them out. She just said quietly that they would die without the earth, so I helped her take them back to the earth.
Before Jane could ever set foot in the forests of Gombe, there was Dr. Leakey, a world-renowned paleontologist dedicated to uncovering the origins of humankind. Leakey believed to truly understand our ancestors, we had to first study our closest relatives, the chimpanzees. He needed someone with patience, curiosity, and courage to live among them. Not a trained scientist, but a natural observer. He chose Jane.
And I heard about the late Louis Leakey. He's the next person that I want to really discuss as one of my most powerful feathers. I went to see him at the Natural History Museum. He asked me all kinds of questions about the animals there. And because I had followed my mother's advice, because I had continued to read books about Africa and animals, because I'd spent hours in the Natural History Museum in London, I could answer many of his questions. I was ready for this opportunity.
At just 26 years old, Jane arrived in what was then Tanganyika, now Tanzania. Her mother came with her, along with a cook named Dominic. They would set up camp in the heart of Gombe. The air was abuzz with insects and the sounds of the forest. The chimpanzees wanted nothing to do with her. Each time she appeared, they fled in terror. For months, she watched from afar, often climbing to a peak overlooking the valley below, where she could peer through her binoculars and take notes. She spent long, quiet days surrounded by birds and monkeys, sometimes even startled by the passing buffalo or leopard in the early dawn. Gradually, she began to recognize individuals among the chimpanzees. Their faces, their movements, their distinct personalities. One day, something extraordinary happened. A large male with a white beard wandered into the camp. Jane named him David Greybeard. He calmly climbed a palm tree, feasted on nuts, and even took a banana from Jane's hand. It was the first time a wild chimpanzee was willing to approach her. From that moment on, everything changed. David Greybeard's trust opened a door into a hidden world of chimpanzees. Soon, others followed. Jane watched them build nests high in the trees, take care of their young, and interact with one another in ways that mirrored human tenderness and conflict. Then, one morning, near the peak, Jane made a discovery that would alter the course of science. She watched David Graybeard break off a twig, strip off its leaves, and use it to fish termites from a mound. Until that moment, it was believed that only humans made tools. Jane's observation shattered that idea. When she telegraphed Louis Leakey, his response was,
"Now we must redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as humans."
That single act of tool-making blurred the lines that once clearly separated humans from the rest of the animal kingdom. Chimpanzees could plan, problem-solve, and shape their environments, traits once thought unique to humans. Jane went on to document their hunting practices, their social hierarchies, and their emotional depth. Instead of treating chimpanzees as a number on a data sheet, she saw them as individuals. She gave them names and recognized their personalities, their emotions, and their intelligence. Her mother's presence at Gombe also made a lasting impact. While Jane spent her days out in the field, Van ran a small clinic for local villagers, offering medicine and care. This act of compassion helped the community see Jane not as a foreign intruder, but as an ally. In 1962, a new visitor arrived in Gombe, a photographer sent by National Geographic to film Jane Goodall's story. His name was Hugo von Lawick. Jane didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat for Hugo. She was afraid that this particular man could threaten the relationship that she was building with the chimpanzees. Hugo could ruin everything in her eyes. Hugo wasn't just another outsider with a camera. He loved animals. Photography was simply his way of getting closer to them. And before long, Jane realized they had something special. Jane Goodall went to Cambridge the same year to start working on her PhD. However, she was sad to leave Gombe and sad to leave Hugo. Her unorthodox but rigorous detail to field notes and observations won her respect amongst academics and laid the foundation for animal behavioral research. She became one of 8 people from Cambridge allowed to work on a doctorate without first having an undergraduate degree. One of the most impactful events in Jane Goodall's life occurred shortly after leaving Gombe and returning to England. She received a telegraph from Hugo. Jane married Hugo in 1964. They had no plans for their marriage, but just a desire, a drive to return to Gombe. When she earned her doctorate in 1965, Jane and Hugo returned to Gombe. In time, Jane's research camp grew into a full-fledged research center, attracting students and scientists from around the world. Jane and her husband had their only son, Hugo Eric Louis Grub von Lawick, in 1967. Having a child deepened Jane Goodall's bond with the chimpanzees. She now understood the fierce instinct to protect one's young, a feeling that she had long observed in Flo, a devoted chimpanzee mother. Jane often said that Flo taught her what it truly means to be a parent. Jane believed that she could balance motherhood with her groundbreaking research. Yet, as time went on, she found that was increasingly difficult. While she homeschooled Grub, she shifted to more of an administrative role, allowing her students to carry out the fieldwork at Gombe. When Grub turned 6, Jane made a difficult decision. She sent him back to Britain for formal schooling, where he lived with his grandmother. Jane would stay at Gombe. Grub appeared in several documentaries about his mother, including Jane's Journey in 2011 and Jane in 2017, and even inspired her 1972 book, Grub, the Bush Baby, which recounts his early years of growing up in the African wilds. Yet, he chose a quieter life. He became a boat builder and lived away from the public eye with his wife and 3 kids. When National Geographic stopped funding Hugo's work in Gombe, he moved on to film in the Serengeti. Jane, however, couldn't leave her chimps behind. Jane and Hugo were both committed to their work. It gave them a sense of purpose and a mission. Initially, it attracted them to each other, but now it was pulling them apart. Their marriage ended in 1947. However, Jane had nothing but gratitude for the time they shared. In 1977, Jane founded the Jane Goodall Institute. While targeting both poverty and conservation, the Institute was able to support both people and their surrounding environment. Unfortunately, in 2000, Jane's mother passed. Jane reflected publicly in interviews about her mother's courage, her encouragement for Jane's love of animals, and her unwavering belief in Jane's mission and dream.
And the authorities had the same reaction. They refused to take responsibility for a young girl arriving on her own. But in the end, they said, oh, all right, if she has a companion. So who volunteered to come? That same amazing mother. She packed up in England. She could come for 4 months. It was a shoestring of an expedition. We had one ex-army tent that leaked, no fancy sewn-in ground sheets, but just a piece of canvas on the ground, and the sides of the tent rolled up to let the air in, but also let in the spiders and the scorpions and the snakes, none of which she liked very much, but she never complained. I mean, how amazing, how many mothers would do that?
Jane Goodall would go on to receive a series of titles, such as being named a UN Messenger of Peace in 2002, and 2 years later, she would be made a Dame of the British Empire. Even in her 80s, Jane Goodall traveled relentlessly, often more than 300 days a year. She spoke about the climate crisis, conservation, and the profound interconnection of all life. On October 1st, 2025, Jane Goodall passed away in Los Angeles at age 91 on yet another public speaking tour. A fitting farewell to a woman who spent her life giving a voice to animals. What began as a young woman's dream on the shores of Lake Tanganyika became one of the greatest stories of exploration and empathy. This is Ivar with Zoological Studios, wishing you all a wonderful day.